I believe we have quorum, so we should get started. Good evening, everyone.
Why can't I hear?
Hosting us on their land. On to with our agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Trustee Scott, you have cut out for most of your opening. I think most people are not having or having a lot of trouble hearing you.
So I will carry on until Trustee Scott returns then. I'd like to call for a mover to approve the agenda and a seconder. So Trustee Schwartz, are you moving to approve the agenda? And Trustee Lyra, are you seconding? Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes.
What do you propose, Trustee Lyra?
No, sorry, I was seconding.
Oh, okay. And seeing no proposed changes to the agenda, I'd like to call the question on the agenda. All those in favor? And opposed? And that passes, and thank you very much. We have an agenda. And moving on to item 3, we have some delegations this evening. And I'd like to call upon, so each delegation is a 2-minute delegation. And I'd like to call upon the first person who is delegating, and that is Judith Varga Toth. So if someone could let her in from the waiting room, if she's not here already. It's difficult for me to see. Are you here, Judith?
I don't believe she's here, Chair.
Okay, well, if she does come in the next little while, we can put her in. Then moving on to the next person that is delegating, and that is Kira Dean. So I can see that you indeed are here. So thank you very much for coming. And you have 2 minutes to delegate, and which afterwards we can have up to 3 questions of clarification amongst the trustees. Go ahead.
Okay, my name's Kira. As a parent, I have 2 children in the elementary schools, and I've just noticed a huge rise in mental health issues amongst school children, like their peers, due to the impact of COVID-19, the restrictions, the lockdown measures, the move to online schooling. My own kids, their friends, parents with children have seen their kids now having anxiety, depression, eating disorders, suicidal ideation, and it's just seems to be getting worse and worse. And I believe that there's a lack of accessibility to mental health services. We need something that addresses more than a brief intervention, and that not existing is having a detrimental impact on children's mental health. There needs to be more full-time permanent health workers in the schools, such as social workers that the school board already has in place, but they need to be there every day to address the children's mental health, as well as teachers. Teachers are there to teach, and even before the pandemic, this was a need, because now we have a parallel pandemic and it's the children's mental health, which is going unaddressed in our school system. And the reliance on free community services requires months of waiting. Fee services are out of reach for numerous families, and they also have lengthy wait lists. So I believe we need to act as a school community to get our children out of this crisis, and we can't ignore it. And otherwise, we'll have long-term implications on children's mental health. Places like Australia and Finland are examples of implementing more full-time, more like mental health teams. So, for example, in Australia, there was a commission that allows one social worker for every 500 students. This early intervention can also address the school culture and environment to bring down, to address barriers and inequities for children, and therefore make more inclusive schools. And I think that's what we all are aiming to do. And we can pull from places like social work schools that have graduate students who can be supervised by a social worker that is already in place within the board. We can
Oh,
pull.
excuse me, Ms. Dean. Could you please wrap it up?
Yep. Okay. So we have psychologists whose credentials aren't recognized. We could use their wealth of knowledge to maybe call them a mental health worker. We can, come up with different ways of being creative about this and take it to the government. That's it. That's all I have to say. I just see it as a real crisis with so many children, and it's heartbreaking. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions for Ms. Dean? And seeing none, I'd like to thank you for your delegation, Ms. Dean. That was very thoughtful of you to mention that, and we certainly recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving on to a delegation from Susan Alsenbach. And are you there? Yes, you are. So go ahead. Again, you have 2 minutes, and afterwards there might be up to 3 questions of clarification from trustees. So go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for having me. First, I want to say I have a daughter who is in grade 10, and I am extremely worried as a parent, as I know many others, about the lack of time that they are actually getting even online at the schools at present. I know that my daughter has friends in similar grades in other school districts that are getting full day schooling. And I appreciate the difficulties of COVID and the stress that this has all placed on teachers and everybody concerned. And echoing what Kira mentioned about the mental health issues surrounding it for everybody. However, I would like to try and understand why our school board is not able to provide full day online schooling to these students when other school boards are able to within the same town or city. And that makes me ponder about what is going to happen to them as they go into their further education and the ramifications that this is going to have for them when they apply for universities or further education. And as a parent, that really worries me, not even taking into account the mental health issues that this has on them. They feel that they're missing out on things. There's a huge amount of homework that's being given almost as a replacement for the time they would actually have in class with teachers or maybe be online. So not only are they required to focus for 4 hours every day constantly with a 20-minute break in between, but then they have to spend hours and hours of homework on their own or trying to contact other students to understand what the teacher has said or spoken about during the class. And I find this is something as a parent that is truly worrying because I have no support to be able to give to my child. I don't know what has gone on in the lesson and I don't have any information about it. So that's my query.
No, thank you very much, Ms. Alsenbach. And do we have any questions for her? Trustee Lyra, go ahead.
So I would ask that the chair ask the director to give a response to the query.
I will, if the director wishes to respond, then she is able to. However, it's usually a question to the delegate at this point, Trustee Lyra.
Thank you through you, Chair. Just in the interest of being expeditious, I'll ask AD Reynolds to respond, as he's been actively engaged in the architecture of the deliberate program at secondary school. AD Reynolds, please.
Great, thank you. And through you, Chair. And I believe the question is about the current remote period that we have right now and full day of online learning during the remote period. So, you know, different districts have some different constraints. In our district, our collective agreement allows secondary teachers to teach up to 225 minutes a day. Right now, most full-time teachers have 2 classes in a quadmester. So the most that they can teach, the most we can have is 225 minutes of class time, which we do have 112 and a half and 112 and a half. So if you're a full-time teacher, you have 2 classes in this quadmester, then that'll bring you to the 225. Typically before COVID, outside of COVID, secondary instructional days around 300 minutes. So there is a need for some, in addition to the usual homework, some asynchronous learning that is happening this year. But we also have scheduled in a 75-minute remote support period at the end of the day, which is also accessible to students. After their 2 classes, they can still continue to access that remote support period, which is synchronous learning. And if they choose to do so, that would then have them at the 300 minutes mark on the day. So really, we strive to provide the most direct synchronous instructional time that we can within the restraints of our collective agreements.
Am I allowed to
Thank you very much.
ask a question?
No, it's only trustees, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But we do have student trustee Liu.
Hi, I'm a grade 12 student, just to introduce myself. I was wondering whether or not whether your daughter was able to access those remote student support periods, whether or not she found them helpful, and just like comparatively, whether or not you thought that, whether or not, you know, she had that experience with them and whether or not that experience was positive.
She did try them. And I am afraid to say that she did not find them helpful, because often the teacher that was trying to help her was not actually teaching that subject and was not always aware of what they had covered that morning in class.
Okay, that's really concerning to hear, but thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank you very much for your delegation, Ms. Elsenbach. Really appreciate that. And thank you very much. And do we have Judith Varga Toth anywhere? I don't see her. Maybe we can get her in afterwards somehow, if possible. But so we'll hold that. Moving then on to the next item in the agenda. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Scott, Chair Scott, who's back, because it is the report from board. So if you could take over the chair, Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Trustee Penny. And the next item is the report from board in camera. So I will call upon the Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. The board met in camera this evening. Reports and recommends as follows. On a financial matter, moved by Trustee Blackburn, which I will second, that staff be authorized to proceed as directed in board in camera with respect to a financial matter.
And we have held our discussion in camera, and I will call the question on this in a recorded vote, which we will do by e-scribe. Manager Guthrie, could you please open the vote? And the motion is carried, 11 in favor and 1 opposed. Vice Chair Penny?
Thank you very much. And on a motion by Trustee Jenkins, which I will second, that staff be authorized to proceed as directed in board, in camera, with respect to a financial matter.
And again, we have held our discussion in camera, and I will ask Manager Guthrie to open the vote for this item. And the motion is carried unanimously, 12 in favor. Vice Chair Penny?
Thank you very much. And it was a busy evening, so yet another one moved by Trustee Boothby, which I will second, that staff be authorized to proceed as directed in board and camera with respect to a financial matter.
And again, I will ask if Manager Guthrie could please open the vote on this third item. And again, this motion is carried with 12 in favor, none opposed. And thank you. And back to you again, Trustee Penny.
Thank you very much. On a motion by Trustee Blackford, what I will second, that the tentative local settlement between the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation Student Support Professionals, which form a collective agreement dated 1st of September 2019 to August 31st, 2022, be ratified.
And again, we have had our debate in camera, and I will invite Manager Guthrie to open the vote. And this motion is carried unanimously, 12 in favor, none opposed. And I would like to express our appreciation to our staff negotiating team and also to the negotiating team from the student support professionals.
And one
Trustee
further
Kenny?
item, Madam Chair. On a motion by Trustee Jenkins, which I will second, that the tentative agreement of local matters between the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation Plant Support Staff Unit, which will form a renewal collective agreement dated 1st of September 2019 to August 31st, 2022, be ratified.
And again, we had our debate in camera, and I will ask Manager Guthrie, please, to open the vote. And the motion is carried unanimously, 12 in favor, none opposed. And again, to the negotiating teams from both sides who worked very hard to get here, our own staff team, and also our negotiating team from the Plant Support Staff Unit. Thank you all. Trustee Penny, anything further?
That concludes my report for the in-camera meeting, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I see that our other delegation has now joined the meeting. So I would like to go to the delegation from Judith Varga-Toth, who may have had some of the same internet issues as I've had this evening. So you have 2 minutes to speak, and welcome. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much, and my apologies. Bonsoir, good evening. My name is Judy, and I'm a mother of 5 with 2 currently in high school. I have been a parent council member and school volunteer in 5 OCDSB schools over the past 20 years. Tonight, I'm addressing you as a parent and an adult deeply concerned about the mental health and educational achievement of our youth currently in your schools. I recognize the pandemic was unplanned for and has wrought havoc. However, after nearly 14 months, it is high time to adapt creatively and courageously as other jurisdictions and countries have done. I speak for my children and many others, indeed the majority, who far from thriving are increasingly alienated, anxious, depressed, and certainly uneducated. I ask you, why is it that you are developing a 2-tier education system? One for those who learn well online, a small minority, and one for the rest. Those studying at the OCV receive all-day education every day and have done so since September. The rest receive substandard education through no fault of the heroic, hardworking teachers of the OCDSB, my husband included. From your misleading email of February 27th titled September 2021, we're ready to welcome all students back to the classroom, it is clear you intend to continue with this substandard approach in September. Blaming this on the provincial government simply passes the buck. While students in the other Ottawa boards study all day, in our high schools, only every second day half days. My teens, like many, many others, can't learn online, and I work full time. They have learned virtually nothing this year. And you propose to continue with this model fully 18 months after the pandemic began. Ottawa health officials report calamitous levels of anxiety, self-harm, eating, and substance abuse. Dr. Etches has said that schools must be last to close and first to open, for real. In-person daily education is essential for our youth. We must avoid a lost generation. My children and others have lost faith in us, the adults meant to support them. I respectfully ask you to advocate fiercely, think creatively, plan humanely, and both return our youth to school in person this spring and in September, following best practices from around the world. Our children, our future depend on it. Merci, thank you.
Thank you very much for your delegation. Are there any questions for Ms. Varga-Toth? Seeing none, I would like to invite the director if she has any comment in terms of the issues that have been raised here, because they are significant issues. Madam Director.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, certainly we do share many of the concerns that have been raised, particularly around mental health. And we have registered the concerns that have been raised around the anxiousness to expeditiously return students to the classroom full-time every day. And so we certainly don't disagree that that is the ideal scenario to arrive at. And when it is that we are able to arrive at that is not something that I can predict at this point. But we certainly share that as a goal and looking forward to how it is that we are able to move to that goal as soon as is safe to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, Judy, for coming tonight, for taking the time to come and say some important things to us.
Thank you.
Moving on then to the next item on our agenda, that is the chair's briefing. And certainly it is not going unnoticed that next week is Mental Health Week. Our OCDSB mental health professionals will be offering some special group sessions for parents to ask general questions. The discussions will focus on promoting and sustaining mental health and on tips that parents can use for themselves or their children. The sessions are running next week and space is limited. More information is on our website and will be added to our website. And parents can also send questions to the following email address: children's mental health, all one word, at ocdsb.ca. Secondly, the OCDSB will be hosting the second session of our Black Excellence series on May the 18th. The panel for this session will feature 4 professionals who will offer career advice for students. And again, more details can be found on our website. And finally, for those of you who would like to follow our budget discussions, our scheduled budget committee of the whole meeting that was supposed to happen on the 4th of May has been canceled because we still do not have information on the grants for students' needs from the province. Meetings will be held later in the May, we expect, as soon as we have the relevant information. And you can always follow the scheduling of meetings on the website. Are there any questions? Trustee Lyra?
This is now the second year in a row that we are getting the grants for students' needs later than we need them. What actions can we as a board take to encourage or remind the province that we need these numbers to plan our next year? Have we written letters? Have we otherwise asked the province to explain why these are coming late?
The question was raised with the minister as recently as yesterday afternoon. We are certainly not the only board who is raising this question with the minister. The response was that we would have the grants for student needs, quote, very shortly, and that they were still in the process of finalizing some of the finer details. It's an issue that has been raised repeatedly with the ministry, and it's one where we really don't have any other recourse than to continue to raise it. Trustee Boothby?
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just also reiterate that OPSPA has been advocating very strongly since February for the Crown to deliver us the GSNs on time. And we have been getting the same message in the last month that they will be ready very soon.
Trustee Bell?
Thank you. Chair, along a similar line, when it comes to our recommendation that we made to the minister for prioritization of vaccination for our education workers, is there anything more that we can do as a board to encourage the province to prioritize education workers for vaccinations?
At this point in time, we and many other boards have raised this issue repeatedly. We have written letters and we raise it weekly in our conversations with the minister as well. He has indicated that he is continuing to add the health, the public health table to move education workers up on the list, but right now there really isn't a great deal more that we can do. Trustee Lyra, do you have a second question?
I do. I would like us to revisit writing a letter requesting or demanding, or perhaps with stronger language, as we've discussed a number of times, that the ministry send us the GSNs or their prototypes for the GSNs sooner rather than later. I think it's important that we write a letter every time that the ministry is supposed to have done something and doesn't, because I think we should be very clearly on the public record that this kind of behavior from the ministry, in my eyes, is unacceptable.
Thank you, Trustee Lyra. We will take that under advisement. Trustee Huff.
Further to Trustee Bell's comments, is there any way that we can literally maneuver around the ministry on this and engage our relationship with Ottawa Public Health to expedite these vaccinations, not only for teaching staff, but all support staff, all school staff, whether they are custodial staff, admin staff, if they are in contact with the children in those schools, they need vaccines to be back there safely. And that would extend to our daycare providers as well. And I think that, Ottawa Public Health has been a true ally in this pandemic to us, and appealing to them is probably a more expeditious way to see some action take place.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Huff. I believe that child care workers are now also part of the phase 2 priorities. And it's not just teachers. They've started with special education teachers and the staff who directly support high needs special education students, but all education workers are basically part of the phase 2 priority. I don't know whether the director has any further comment on this, given that staff continue in conversations with Ottawa Public Health. Madam Director.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I echo many of the comments that you've made. The additional comment that I would insert is that we do certainly have it's a very layered relationship. The trustee is correct. Ottawa Public Health has been an amazing ally and amazing partner in this work, and have really worked hard to tailor the delivery of the vaccine to our unique local needs. That said, we also have to recognize that there's a federal component of this and an availability question in terms of the distribution of the vaccine. And so public health has made it very clear that while it is that they are very, very committed to working with us and prioritizing as per need, when you shift one priority to another, it means that you are shifting a fixed amount of vaccine from one priority area to another. And so there, at this point, there is very much a dependency on the availability of product, if you will. And so we do continue to advocate. To echo Chair Scott's comments, I am on some of those meetings with her, but I'm also on the other provincial meetings, and at every single table, this is a topic of conversation, starting with education workers, moving into childcare. It is tabled at every meeting, every time, and documented in the minutes, to Trustee Lyra's point. So it is made very clear that there is a question, there is an advocacy, and there is an answer. And so none of your points are offside. They are certainly well taken. And I want to assure yourself and all the trustees that we are indeed working with every partner who's engaged with us, and to a person, every partner is equally committed to those very same goals.
And seeing no further questions, I would like to move on then to the briefing from the director.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Registration is now open for the OCDSB extended day program for the next school year. That's the 21-22 school year. For further information, including the parent handbook and a list of fees and locations, please visit the extended day program website. We'd also like to remind graduating students that there are many scholarships that are available for you to support post-secondary studies. Please contact your guidance department for information. We are approaching May, and so some of those scholarship deadlines will become due very soon. And so we really actively encourage our students to check in with their guidance department for information and get moving on those applications. The OCDSB is offering virtual international language classes this summer for students in junior kindergarten to grade 8. These classes are free for Ontario residents. The registration deadline is June the 11th, and classes run June 28th to July 23rd. Also, summer school registration opens on May 3rd for students in grade 6 to 8. Secondary students can also register for summer school programs and can do so until June the 24th. For more information about our language classes and summer school, visit our continuing education section of our website. So that is the director's update. And I will wait, Chair Scott, if there are any questions to respond, and with your indulgence, continue to the COVID update.
And I'm not, Trustee Campbell, you have a question for the director on this part of her briefing?
Oh, perhaps not. I'll wait.
And if there are no questions on the director's briefing, I will move on to the COVID-19 update and turn back to the director.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. The first item for the COVID-19 update is pertaining to case management. We continue to work with Ottawa Public Health to monitor COVID-19 cases affecting students and staff. With the spring break and subsequent shift to remote learning, we're seeing lower case numbers for both students and staff. As of yesterday, the recorded case numbers were 63 student cases and 15 staff cases. That's 15. Pertaining to outbreak management, over the course of this school year, the OCDSB has experienced 37 outbreaks, 28 of which were declared in 2021. In the weeks leading up to the spring break, the OCDSB, like other school districts and communities, saw a rise in COVID cases and in outbreaks. I'm pleased to advise that OPH, Ottawa Public Health, has developed some additional resources in Arabic to support our families. We have linked to these on our OCDSB website, shared with the schools, and promoted awareness in newsletters and in our social media platforms. We continue, per the earlier conversation, we continue to push for vaccines for all education workers. We continue to encourage staff and families to monitor the Ottawa Public Health vaccine webpage and to take the first available vaccine appointment. Today, the Ontario government announced that childcare workers in licensed childcare settings across the province will also be eligible to book their COVID-19 vaccination appointments. In addition, the province is expanding booking for vaccination appointments to individuals 45 and over in designated hotspot communities in 13 health units, as identified by postal code through its provincial booking system. As of 8 a.m. today, all individuals who are 45 and over in 2021, so you may not have turned 45 yet, but your birthday you turned 45 this year, living in one of the 114 high-risk neighborhoods will be eligible to book a COVID-19 vaccine appointment at a mass immunization clinic through the provincial online booking system and call center, or directly through public health units that use their own booking system. Supporting students with special education needs, school staff continue to support students with special education needs both remotely and for those whose needs cannot be met remotely in person. As of the end of last week, the OCDSB had 183 students with very complex needs attending school in person. We continue to work on planning for September. While we expect new ministry guidance documents, we have not yet received these. We will provide further updates as information becomes available. I also wanted to reassure trustees that per the request from several meetings ago, I did follow up with the Deputy Minister of Education regarding the concerns that have been raised about provincial directives to adjust our secondary program model this year. In my communication, I impressed upon the ministry that the differentiated approach in Ottawa for the OCDSB versus other school boards has generated some confusion and frustration from the community, and that looking forward into September, we would like to see and are expecting greater consistency in the directives. So that is all from my update today, Chair, and of course available to you for questions or through you for questions.
Thank you, Director Williams-Taylor, and I have Trustee Campbell.
I'm better placed now. Thank you very much. So just following up on one of the last items there, and thank you for the update. With respect to the, I guess it was the Deputy Minister then. So with respect to, I guess two questions, if I may. So first of all, have we received, so thank you for the representation in terms of rational and fair-minded differentiation or not of our board versus others going on a go-forward basis. I think that's an important representation to make, and I appreciate that. But I guess two questions. One, have we been able to secure an explanation and rationale as to why differentiation was made in the first place? I think that's important to understand ministry thinking, because otherwise it's irrational, to be honest. And I guess the second question is, with respect to your representation, your go-forward representation, have you received any positive acknowledgement or indication of agreement or any kind of acknowledgement whatsoever? Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm not aware of, I'm unaware of, and I have not been privy to what the nature of the conversations were with other districts. That was not shared with me or expanded upon in any conversation. What was shared, however, is a reflection and an observation that for districts who undertook some of this direction, the data, and that is the OCDSB in this case, that the data does have an indication that there has been indeed a positive impact on our students in consideration of the grand scheme provincially. That was noted by the province and through the conversation. And so recognition that we have in fact secured a positive outcome for our students. From the point of view of a go forward and a commitment to similar direction everywhere, I was not able to secure that. And again, I am not privy and probably will not be privy to the conversations that are held directly with districts. And similarly, other districts may not be necessarily privy to the conversations and directives that we are given. So I hope that
that certainly helps. I appreciate it. I wouldn't expect that private conversations would necessarily be retailed or shared. But notwithstanding that, I would think that if plans put forward by different school boards all are, for all intents and purposes, apparently identical, I think the challenge function question is, well, why is one board allowed to do it and not the other? That doesn't necessarily get into private conversations with respect to other boards, but simply asking the ministry for consistency in decision making and direction, and for business case rationale where they're differentiating. I mean, I think that's just standard, right? So I guess I wanted to, understand that a little bit. It's not about sharing private information, but basically, if our plan, our public plan is the same as somebody else's public plan, and then that's a. So I was wondering if you could enlighten in any way there, if that question's been asked.
So thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Indeed, the question has been raised and I have not secured a response.
Okay, great. Do you have a commit? Have you had any acknowledgement of the question, or?
Well, yes, the question was raised in a direct conversation, and out of the conversation, what I was able to secure was an acknowledgement of our successful outcomes, and there is not an inclination to go into any of the exchange rationale, directions, or any such kind with other districts other than our own.
That's fine. So basically, provision of a rationale has been declined, even though requested by the deputy minister. So I think that needs to be clear. They declined to provide a rationale. The slightly different positive outcome is neither here nor there. Perhaps other boards should have been forced to do the same thing then. But that answers my key question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And seeing no further questions, thank you, Director, for that update. Moving on then, we're into matters for action. Item 8.1, confirmation of the board minutes from the 30th of March 2021. Would someone like to move those? Trustee Schwartz, you will move. And Trustee Blackburn will second that. Are there any errors or omissions in these minutes? Seeing none, I will call the question on confirming the minutes. Oh, Trustee Bell, is that your hand up?
That is, just shaking it right here. Okay, through you, Chair. Point or section number 3 under delegations, Adrian Gollner came to discuss the matters concerning Cambridge Public School and a wish to include a dual program track in that school. In the second paragraph, it incorrectly states that when he was on Cambridge Street Public School Council, they identified the need for French immersion. It should state not English with core French, because it already has an English with core French program. Hopefully the minutes will be able to reflect that.
I'm sure that board services have noted that. Is there anything else?
That's all, thanks.
Thank you. And seeing no other hands here, I will then call the question on confirming these minutes. With that, all those in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. And the next up is the minutes from our special board meeting on the 6th of April, 2021. Would someone like to move those? Trustee Jenikins, seconded by Trustee Campbell. And are there any errors or omission in these minutes from the 6th of April? Seeing none, call the question on confirming these minutes. All those in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. Is there any business arising from either of these sets of minutes from the 30th of March or the 6th of April? And it appears there is none. So that brings me on then to receipt of the Committee of the Whole report. If I can find my agenda again. The Committee of the Whole report from the 6th of April. Vice Chair Penny.
I'd like to move receipt of the Committee of the Whole report from April 6th, 2021.
And that is seconded by Trustee Boothby. Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions in this report? And if there are none, I will call the question on receipt of the Committee of the Whole report from the 6th of April. All those in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. Trustee Penny? Can't hear you, Trustee
I
Penny.
think Trustee Ellis has his hand up for something there.
Trustee Ellis, did you have a question?
Sorry, a hanging hand.
So back to you, Trustee Penny, on the 6th of April report.
I'd like to move receipt of the special committee.
So we're finished with the 6th of April report. Those recommendations were dealt with, I believe, at the special board meeting that evening.
They're correct, yes.
So moving on then to the special committee of the whole report from the 20th of April.
I'd like to move receipt of the special committee of the whole report of 20th of April, 2021.
And I think there's something else you want to do with that.
So are we moving on to the to continue on the
No, and
policy?
that if you're moving that, it would be helpful if you could include the part about the amendments that were made in committee, so we don't have to do them all over again.
Oh, okay, and that along with the amendments of to the policy that we made in the committee.
And do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Huff, thank you. In terms of receipt, are there any errors or omissions in the report? If there are none, then I will call the question on receipt of the report with those amendments built into the ones that were carried in committee, built into the draft policy. All those in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Anything else to report from the 20th, Trustee Penny?
No, that's concluded, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. So that brings us then to the next item on our agenda, the approval of policy P.146.HR, equitable recruitment, hiring, and promotion. I note that there is supplemental information that has been provided here in memo 21-047, which includes an appendix with the fate of all of the amendments that have been dealt with and that were still on remaining to be dealt with at our committee of the whole meeting. And note as well that if we decide to go to rules of committee, our non-voting representatives from committee of the whole are here and may respond to questions from trustees if trustees need information. In other words, they are here as a resource to us should we need those resources. So is there any staff introduction on this, Madam Director?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I don't believe a new introduction is required. I think that we are in a position to carry on with the process that we had undertaken.
Thank you very much. I will recognize Trustee Boothby then.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to put the motion on the table again that the board approve policy P.146.HR, equitable recruitment, hiring, and promotion. And I would also like to move that we adopt the committee of the whole rules, please.
Let's deal with that as two pieces, please. First of all, we need a seconder for the motion. Trustee Penny, you had your hand up? Were you going to second?
I will second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So first of all, the floor is open to dealing with that. Now, in terms of the motion to go to rules of committee, that's a procedural motion that is in order. And do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Schwartz, are you seconding that?
Yes, but Madam Chair, I also have just a comment to make or a request to make with respect to moving to rules of committee. And I'm wondering if we might actually try and expedite the process by moving some of these amendments in a block versus going through individually. It took us far too long during the special meeting last week. And we're going to be here until 11 o'clock tonight, I fear, and not get through the whole agenda.
If there are some of them that could be approved as a block, I hope that will come to light as they are moved onto the floor. But basically, we do have the memorandum with the entire list and the disposition of those. We will begin by dealing with the ones that were waiting for additional information or language from staff, and then we will proceed to the ones that had not yet been moved in committee. So we'll do our best to get through it quickly and expeditiously.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, Madam Chair, if we could actually have those that have made some amendments suggest potentially to put those amendments forward as a block of amendments, so we can, those that are likely not needing a lot of debate.
Well, that's something that is going to be up to the movers, Trustee Schwartz.
That's what I'm asking of the trustees.
So they can think about that, but in the meantime, we need to vote on the motion to adopt rules of committee.
Yeah, so I'll second the moving to committee.
So I will call the question then on adopting rules of committee. All those in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. I will refer everybody to the Appendix A, which has had all of the finally approved in committee recommendations incorporated in a revised draft, and to Appendix B to the memo 21-047, which is a complete list of all of the amendments. And if we can start working through, unless somebody wishes to propose that certain ones can be combined. I don't know how many are easily combined, but basically, I think that it's probably going to be simplest just to work our way through, unless anyone has any specific suggestions.
I have a suggestion on a block of the ones that have been put forward by me, Chair Scott.
That's excellent. We will deal with that when we get to it then. So that brings us then back to the ones that were leftovers from the last meeting, beginning at amendment number 5 from Trustee Jenkins. And I understand that she has worked with staff to get some language to add a definition for inclusive. So Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Scott, and thank you to Carolyn Tanner for her and senior staffer again for getting a very purposeful definition. I just felt that it was important that we have clarity between diversity and inclusive. So it is in the chat, and if my fellow colleagues could take a moment to read it.
And could we perhaps have that as a screen share for the benefit of everyone who is watching on the live stream? And since we're in rules of committee, you don't need a seconder for that, Trustee Jenkins. But if you have further introduction, please go ahead.
No, I believe it's self-explanatory, the definition, but I'm happy to answer questions. And Carolyn Tanner, I'm sure, will help as well.
Thank you for that, Trustee Jenkins. First question, is this friendly? And if it is not friendly, would you please raise your hand? Trustee Ellis, are you telling us this is not friendly?
Sorry, I can't find my mouse on the screen. I'm still reading it, and yeah. Yeah, it's fine. I'm fine with it. Thanks.
Is there anyone else? So I'll ask again, just to be clear, is this friendly or not friendly? If it's not friendly, raise your hand, please. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. So that seems to be friendly, and therefore that definition will be incorporated. Thank you very much, Trustee Jenkins, and thank you to Ms. Tanner. Moving on to the next one that was left over from our last round, and that was in item I think item 34. Trustee Campbell, that one was yours. The language of referring to programs or outcomes.
Yes, thank you. And I'd ask for, I guess, further comment on the two. And sorry, where are we at then with that?
We're on amendment 34 from the memorandum, which relates to section 4.8b, Roman numeral 4, with regards to changing the word programs to outcomes.
Okay, right. And so in the staff memo, if I'm reading things correctly, they have changed or the wording to outcomes. I'm not sure I follow.
No, you had proposed
okay,
providing the best possible outcomes.
That's fine. So I'll move that. This is supposed to be a policy for all staff groups, and not just those directly serving students or defining programs in schools. So I think a more generic statement is due here, but I'm open to staff comment.
Well, staff have provided their comment in the memorandum that they have no problems with this amendment. So I will ask if this is friendly. And Trustee Ellis, you have your hand up. Is it relating to this?
Well, I'd like to speak to the motion.
Please
not the amendment, the motion. So I'll just leave my. I'm just
okay.
Let's deal
with the amendments first. Trustee, so is this one friendly? And I see no objection. So the amendment to as shown in Amendment 34 is incorporated. And I believe those were the only ones that were left pending from previously. So that brings us then to the.
Was there also the equity, Chair, definition?
Oh, did I miss that?
I believe, unless I just missed it.
And the equity definition, my note says that that one has been incorporated in the new, oh, okay, and for review at board. So yes, we do need to deal with that. Thank you for catching that, Trustee Bell. So this is your amendment. Are you going to move this as an amendment because it is there, but it is still to be reviewed?
I believe what we had determined was it was to go back to the board to determine the best definition that would align with other definitions at this point, because there was a concern with the definition in the equity human rights roadmap that the word even-handedness should not be included. Do we have any staff comment? Was there any further determination on what would be the best definition for equity that would align?
And let's go to staff, Madam Director.
Sorry, too many buttons. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I will ask Human Rights and Equity Advisor Carolyn Tanner to comment on her best advice there.
Sorry, I just need a minute to. Is it possible to put the definition into the chat, Nicole? Thank you very much, Madam Director.
And just for reference, it is item 6 where the equity definition is being addressed.
I agree with the removal of reference to even-handedness. I am supportive of a definition that talks about the removal of disproportionality between groups because it requires action. And I think that's what we need to be doing, taking equity away from being aspirational to being action-oriented. And in terms of equal access to opportunities and benefits, I think this works. I support this definition.
And so the words that you're referring to are the words in which column? Perhaps you could read them, Ms. Tanner?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I don't have the document open in front of me. I'm going off the chat where Manager Guthrie put the definition of equity.
Madam Chair. Okay, and what she has put in the chat is the same as in column 3 for the amendment number 6. Equity refers to fairness of treatment and processes by the removal of systemic barriers, disparity and disproportionality between groups, using extra and positive measures to bring about equal access to opportunities and benefits in society. It does not mean treating everyone the same.
Madam Chair, I believe that is the language in section 2.5 as it currently stands, and therefore no amendment is required to achieve this language.
Yeah, it was unclear whether that had actually been approved previously, or whether we needed to have to deal with the amendment. Again, because it was not technically, I think, approved in committee, although it was incorporated in the new draft for review at board. So are we friendly and good with this one? I'm seeing no objection, so that one is included. And that brings us then to amendment number 41. And Trustee Bell, you said you thought some of these could potentially be combined.
Yes, I would like to move that 41, 42, 46, and 47 be packaged together for approval. The reason I am bringing these forward as a package is, as you will recall, these are amendments that I am bringing forth on behalf of ACE. And we have made sure that these specific revisions align with the PPM. We have sent these revisions in advance to Superintendent McCoy, and there was no significant, or there was no negative response from her regarding this. And actually, I am very confident that these revisions improve the text.
Thank you for that introduction, Trustee Bell. So my question to the members, is this friendly? Trustee
Sure.
Ellis?
Oh, I'm going to need a few minutes to review the changes. There are 4 items here. I need a little more time than this to say it's friendly. So you can give me more time, or I'll say it's not friendly.
I will be happy to give you another small amount of time.
Which items were they again, Madam Chair?
Items 41, 42, 45.
46 and 47.
Sorry, 45, 46, and 47, or not 46, Trustee Bell?
Not 45, number 41, 42, 46, and 47.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, these may be friendly to me, but I guess I'd like staff comment. If that means I have to say not friendly, so be it, but I guess I'd like staff comment.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I would ask Superintendent McCoy to comment, as she has seen the suggestions.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, I concur with Trustee Bell's comments that she opened with, that these were provided in advance, and have no concerns with these amendments being incorporated.
And I will ask Trustee Ellis if you had enough time to look at them.
I have, thank you. And it was helpful for staff comments.
Thank you for that. And so I will ask again, is this group of amendments 41, 42, 46, and 47 friendly? And I see no objection, so those are incorporated as friendly. Thank you, Trustee Bell. That brings me to Trustee Lyra and Amendment 43.
Yes, I am not going to move any of my things as a block because they all touch on very different pieces. And the last time I tried to move a bunch of very different amendments as a block, we broke them all into pieces. So I'm going to move that we change 43. I have moved outreach strategies to reach a diverse pool of candidates to the end of the sentence because it's the one with a large set of qualifying words and it makes most sense to have it at the end. It's just simple grammar change.
Thank you for that. Is this amendment friendly? And I'm seeing no objection. So that one is incorporated as friendly. Moving on to your next one, Trustee Lyra, 44.
So 44 reads expectations for diverse hiring panels where possible to draw on lived experience, skill set, and education and professional backgrounds in the board. Based on the definitions given at the top of the document, I believe this should say the district.
And that is what you are moving to replace board with district. Is that friendly? And again, I'm seeing no objection, so that one is also incorporated as friendly. And now we are at 45. Trustee Bell.
I would like to withdraw 45, please.
So 45 is withdrawn. 46 and 47 have been dealt with. That brings us to 48 relating to section 4.8D, Roman numeral 7 of the policy. Trustee Bell.
Simple addition to include the word constructive in feedback, improving the text.
And is this friendly? It is not friendly. Trustee Lyra, would you like introduction, Trustee Bell?
No, that's fine.
Trustee Lyra?
So I would like to get a staff comment to understand who is meant by candidates.
Madam Director?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Superintendent McCoy, please.
The reference to candidates would include in the normal course, we offer debriefs to those who are unsuccessful through the process. There are also some processes where feedback would be provided to those who are successful, but the emphasis would be on those who were not the successful candidates through the process.
And by candidates, you're referring to people who've applied for a position?
Correct. And I should say that depending on the position, that we do not offer debriefs to all candidates. In some of our postings, there could be, many applicants that generally the specific debrief or the opportunity to provide feedback would be limited to those who have been shortlisted and have participated at some point in the process. So, for example, have been invited for an interview. So we don't provide a debrief to everyone who submits an application. In some cases, it just wouldn't be feasible.
Trustee Lyra?
So I think that only giving feedback to people who were interviewed, for example, or people who were already shortlisted does not empower communities who do not have the, for example, resume writing skills that would get them to the shortlist or the interview. And so I'm going to make a sub amendment that we switch for candidates to all applicants upon request.
So that is the sub amendment. And is there any staff comment on that? Madam Director?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. It simply wouldn't be feasible to do it. So that is as practical a response as I can give. There are positions for which hundreds of people apply. And so it simply would not be a feasible practice. We also run multiple competitions of multiple kinds simultaneously. So it would be promising to do something that would essentially clog up the entire system to be able to do. So while it is, I do recognize Trustee Lyra's goal. Perhaps there is another contemplation around how to address that goal. But in terms of providing feedback, particularly constructive feedback to every applicant for every competition that we run, it is simply not operationally feasible to do that.
Thank you for that. Is there discussion on the motion? Trustee Ellis, you had your hand up a moment ago.
Yeah, it was to the amendment itself, not the sub amendment. Yes. So
well, this is a new amendment.
Yeah, people with hands up before me is what I meant to say on the sub amendment. I will speak to the sub amendment when it's my turn.
We're not dealing with a sub amendment, Trustee Ellis. What we're dealing with is the amendment to number 48 to include the word constructive. Sorry.
Didn't Trustee Lyra make a sub amendment?
Sorry, you're quite right. This is a sub amendment. So you wanted to speak to the amendment? I need to change pieces of paper here where I'm keeping.
And then I put my hand up to speak to the sub amendment. But there are other people with their hands up before me for the sub amendment.
Well, I think so in terms of on the sub amendment, first of all, Trustee Boothby then.
Thank you, and I appreciate what the mover is trying to do. I'm just wondering from staff, so if applicants are internal applicants, are they not, isn't part of their manager, their next tier manager's job to help mentor them, and part of that mentorship would perhaps be feedback on applications of this type?
Thank you, through Chair. I will ask Superintendent McCoy to weigh in. When you do make the distinction around internal candidates, there is somewhat of an alignment there, or a management of understandings there. But I will turn it to Superintendent McCoy to respond.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Certainly, as the director said, that there are some distinctions between internal and external candidates, and very often in the case of internal candidates, there would be an opportunity for a debrief. However, again, it may depend on the circumstances. Depending on the specific position, it could be, again, a number of applicants who are applying, and it may be to another department or to another school. And so while it would be the immediate supervisor, manager, or principal's role to provide that coaching and support, it may be a position that is being applied for in a different location. Again, there may be more opportunities where those debriefs are provided. But again, I couldn't say that they would be provided in every single circumstance where there is someone who hasn't, for example, been invited to an interview or to the next phase of the selection process.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess if I'm allowed, and perhaps you can respond to this as well, Superintendent McCoy, I'm wondering as well for members that belong to our federations, if they also wouldn't have such a structure within the federation where they mentor each other.
Through you, Madam Chair, I know we work with them, for example, in terms of at times providing professional opportunities around, for example, resume writing, behavioral interviewing, that kind of thing. I'm not familiar with structures that they have internally necessarily around hiring support, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Boothby. And I will go next to Trustee Ellis. I will remind our non-voting representatives that this is board, even though we are using rules of committee, which means that you are not being the unless there is a question by a trustee. So moving on to Trustee Ellis.
Yes, even before the director spoke, I was concerned about the scope of work. She just made it explained what the reality would be. So I won't be supporting this sub amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ellis. And it looks as though we're back to Trustee Lyra for wrap up.
I would like to hear from Mr. Wildman.
And I will ask Mr. Wildman if he has a comment on this.
Okay, I have a comment and probably a question. OTs have always been considered as applicants before externals were considered, even though in the board's apply to education, et cetera, the terminology is that they're external. So I that's my first of two comments. I'm just hoping for confirmation that they are still considered before external applicants who are not employed by the board as occasional teachers.
And that would actually require a comment from staff. Would you like a comment from staff on that, Trustee Lara?
Yes.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Superintendent McCoy, please.
In the context of our collective agreement, we do have requirements for considering occasional teachers before going to external candidates, and that would continue under this policy and whatever procedures are put in place.
I had a second point, if I am allowed.
Yes, Mr. Wildman.
That is, when an applicant applies and feels that their credentials, et cetera, were exceeded all those people who got an interview and they don't get an interview, I would think that the union would represent them in getting some sort of a debriefing to find out why they weren't offered an interview.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Wildman. Moving back to Trustee Lyra.
So I recognize that there would be more work associated with the amendment that I have put forward. I believe that constructive feedback could be broken down for the very large number of applicants into something like, we felt your resume was weak, and then just a couple of links to resume writing workshops that are available or resources for writing resumes. When a candidate is interviewed, there's going to be something that causes an initial rejection. It might be a lack of relevant work experience, and that at that point, constructive feedback would be, you didn't have the requisite number of years in this kind of position. But I really do think that because it says on request, you're not going to get flooded by hundreds of requests for feedback. I think it would be manageable, and I think it's not going to be a multi-paragraph email to every applicant. And so I still think this is a reasonable ask, and so I'm going to encourage my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lyra. I will call the question then first on the sub-amendment. All those in favor of the sub-amendment? And opposed to the sub-amendment? And the sub-amendment fails. Is there any further discussion on the amendment itself? Trustee Ellis, on the amendment itself.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this amendment. My concern with this is that it's constructive is a very vague term. I would hope that feedback would be constructive. I could see where it might not be, but I think we're opening ourselves up to arguments from people who question what the feedback is, that it wasn't constructive, so our policy says it has to be. I'm just wondering, it sets up that thing where there may be a dispute over what is constructive.
Thank you. Moving on to Trustee Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do support this. I don't think there should be necessarily big issues. I do note that this is a minor item in a list of items about kinds of things we want to see specified in procedure. So we don't have to specify the exact implementation and meaning of constructive in this context, right? All we're doing here in this portion of the policy is saying we need a procedure that does all those things. right? So I think that effectively what we're doing is we're conferring that work elsewhere. It's work to be done. And on that basis, I don't have a particular problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Campbell. And there are no further speakers on the amendment to add the word constructive. So back to Trustee Bell for wrap up.
Just to say, this is the type of policy direction that I would like to move forward with as a trustee. The words constructive is the type of direction that I would like to see in this clause. And I'll leave it up to the procedures to flesh out what that means.
Thank you. So I'll call the question then on the amendment to section 4.8D, Roman numeral 7. All those in favor? And opposed? And the amendment is carried. That brings us then to the next item, which is Amendment 49. Trustee Bell.
Again, along the lines that we just heard from Trustee Campbell, this is a list of things that we would like to see in the procedure. And the one that is being proposed, a process for tracking and communicating with the applicant, are words that are taken directly from the PPM that haven't been included in our policy and that I believe should be in the policy.
And is there any staff comment on this one?
I'll ask Superintendent McCoy to respond, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, Trustee Bell is correct. It's in the policy. We didn't include all of the details, but have no difficulty with it being included here. It was our intention to ensure it was included in the procedures.
Thank you. So I will ask if this is friendly. If it's not friendly, please raise your hand. And I'm not seeing any hands. So this amendment number 49 is incorporated in the policy as friendly. Next up, we have amendment number 50. Trustee Lyra, we're back to you.
This policy is a list of, this part of the policy is about our duty as a board to check up and make sure that we are it's us monitoring to make sure that we are meeting obligations under provincial law. I think we should have Access for Ontarians with Disabilities Act on the list of things that we are regularly checking up to make sure that we are accountable for.
And again, I will ask if there's any staff comment on this addition.
Superintendent McCoy, through you, Chair.
Again, no concerns. I think it is certainly legislation that that we are mindful of and that impacts on our hiring processes. So no concerns with it being added here.
And I will ask if this is friendly. And I'm not seeing any hands raised to say it's not. So again, this amendment number 50 is incorporated into the policy as friendly. Moving on then to amendment number 51, Trustee Campbell.
This proposed amendment is similar to a couple of previous ones, and if I had a redo, I would have moved them probably in a block. I think that it's important for the board commitment to monitoring and just anyway to the board commitment. Thank you.
So this would be a modification expanding the language in section 4.10 C of the policy. Is this is there any comment from staff on this one?
I think it makes sense based on previous amendments that were made.
Thank you. Is this one friendly? If not, raise your hand. And seeing no hands raised, we will consider this one adopted and incorporated into the policy as friendly, which brings me then to Amendment 52. Back to you, Trustee Bell.
Great, thank you, Chair. I have a request for, in order to make sure this is a speedy process, there are a number of amendments that have been made within this clause. And so I was going to ask if it would be possible for us to have the representative from ACE walk us through them, because I think she'll be able to do it with much more ease than I would.
And we've also had some amendments that we've already approved to the original for this. So I'm wondering if it would be prudent to have a brief recess and maybe do a breakout room so that perhaps you, Trustee Bell, and Ms. Lamba and whatever staff may need to be involved, can just make sure that the changes are clear so that we can understand exactly what they are and how they fit with the changes that we've already just approved. Manager Guthrie, is it possible to do that as a breakout room?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure who you would like in a breakout room.
I think somebody from board services and Trustee Bell and Ms. Lamba and
Superintendent McCoy.
And Superintendent McCoy.
I will endeavor to put those individuals into a breakout room now.
I have a proposal that might actually expedite this process as well. We would add Rob's addition to Part B of our proposed recommendations. Janice, are you nodding your head to that? Superintendent McCoy is nodding her head to that. Can we do that?
And that won't change any of the other pieces?
No.
If it can be done that simply, then I guess the next question is if you're just going to go ahead then and move that, Trustee Bell, with and including the amendment that has already been made to Part C of this by Trustee Campbell. So
can I please make a short introduction that I pass over to Seema?
Go ahead. Please go ahead and introduce.
Okay, I would like to pass it over to Seema to introduce this, please.
And I will go to Ms. Lamba.
So this amendment basically sort of rearranges and keeps the essence of what was already proposed. I've just put it in, it's just been put in an order from what we would do from a beginning of a process to the end. So the first part is assessing the skills, equity, and human rights competency of the district's workforce and identify any gaps. And then you would collecting voluntary workforce demographics data that will disclose the diversity of the workforce and identify any gaps in representation. And here's where we would add the previous amendment to say, including within separate employee groups and at different levels of the organization. The next part is then doing the employment systems review. And this language, employment systems review, is from the PPM. And it's not in the original, that word isn't used in the original draft. So it's undertaking an employment systems review regularly to determine whether formal and informal employment systems, policies, procedures, and practices are non-discriminatory and do not create barriers or otherwise unfairly impact historically disadvantaged groups. Any effective review will examine organizational culture for unconscious values, assumptions, and behaviors, norms that can disadvantage groups and individuals based on their personal characteristics. So this is from the PPM as well, this part, as to what should be in the employment systems review. And then you developing and implementing an appropriate fairness and employment plan. So that is used here in ours, and it was called a response plan in the previous one. The reason why the change in name, Fairness and Employment Plan, is because it's in the PPM. So to make it consistent with that, that's what they're calling it. The policy should do that. Personally, I'd use a different word, but we want to be consistent with the PPM. And strategy to ameliorate the identified gaps and barriers, including workplace cultural and attitudinal behaviors, to a diverse and inclusive work environment. And to enhance the diverse representation across all levels of the workforce. The next sentence, this plan should include goals, timelines for closing those gaps and removing barriers and positive measures, also in the PPM. So it's just there, it's clear. And the last thing that isn't in the original one, but is in the PPM, and I think it's important, is creating a centralized applicant tracking and file management system for all hiring related documentation. I understand that there is already one, so that word creating may need to be changed to maintaining from the feedback we got when this was sent for review. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
And I will go first of all to staff for comment.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I will ask Superintendent McCoy to comment on these adjustments.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, as the speaker indicated, the amendment incorporates language from the PPM, the original proposed policy. Staff felt included the elements from the PPM, but didn't use the exact wording. So if the board feels that it is clear to include these, then again, it was always staff's intention to ensure that in terms of the monitoring and evaluation and processes that were implemented, that we were aligned with it. I guess in my only last comment would be with regard to proposed E. Again, we do have a centralized applicant tracking system in place. And so as the speaker indicated, I'm not sure that the creating is the appropriate word. I wouldn't want there to be an expectation that we are creating something different from what we already have. But with that understanding, no significant concerns with being more fulsome around the language from the policy.
Thank you very much, Superintendent McCoy. While you were speaking, what occurred to me is perhaps the word for instead of creating should be maintaining, but I'll leave it to somebody else to decide whether or not to make that kind of sub-amendment. So I guess the next question is whether this is in fact friendly or whether there is a sub-amendment needed here or discussion. Trustee Lyra.
I think this would be better with maintaining, so I will move that as a sub-amendment.
Thank you for that. Is there any debate on the sub-amendment, or is the sub-amendment friendly? If the sub-amendment is friendly, and I'm not seeing any more hands raised, so I think we can take the sub-amendment to have creating change to maintaining will be friendly. Thank you, Trustee Lyra. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment as sub-amended? And seeing none, it looks as though we are able to take that whole amendment as friendly as well. And that brings us to the last of the list of amendments to the policy that we have not previously dealt with, and that goes back to you, Trustee Lyra.
Ask if it's friendly, and if it's not, then I'll motivate.
And this is the Amendment 53, which relates to the use of the Oxford comma in multiple sections of the policy. And I will ask if this is friendly. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I think we can take this one also as being adopted as an amendment to the policy to be incorporated into the policy. So that brings us through the entire list of amendments, and I will ask if there is further debate and discussion on the main motion, which is to adopt the policy. Trustee Ellis, you are first on my list.
Thank you. Since we have representatives from the federations with us, I'm wondering what if they have a view on the lack of seniority being in our policy.
And did you wish a comment from anyone in particular, Trustee Ellis?
Well, I know David Wildman is that. I don't recognize necessarily anyone else. Any of the federations that are here, I would certainly appreciate hearing what their position is on that.
Thank you. Do any of our non-voting representatives from the federations wish to speak? Mr. Wildman?
Well, we do have concerns that people who have been here a long time, have a great deal of experience with the board in both daily occasional teacher work and long-term assignments, have gone through teacher performance appraisals in their long-term assignments, interviewed for an LTO list. So they're the first ones considered, or they were the first ones considered for LTO assignments. And those who were successful in LTO assignments and successful in their LTO evaluations were then eligible to apply to be the first considered for permanent jobs. Those members are waiting to see what the final rules, staffing rules will be, because they see their careers being really changed, their career advancement being negatively affected by this process. In addition, we negotiated with the board staffing rules that are not in the collective agreement, but staffing rules that have been followed. And those staffing rules included central placement, which took a lot of the bias or systemic discrimination, etc., out of the picture. And although some people felt that the process for getting onto the LTO list was in some ways not fair, once they had made that grade, they had a clear and transparent and what they saw as a fair path to a permanent contract. They are waiting to see the results of this whole process when we get to the end of it, and some are reconsidering reconsidering their staying on as occasional teachers. So we do have a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman. Did any other of our Federation representatives wish to speak to this? And I'm not seeing any other hands. Back to you, Trustee Ellis.
If I could get a comment from staff on how seniority with the OCDSB will play into our considerations, and whether that would be something that would be addressed in the procedure.
And I'll go to the director.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Superintendent McCoy's position to respond.
Thank you. As trustees are aware, this policy is being created to follow up on the repeal of Regulation 274, which was a seniority-based, largely hiring process. And this board and many others expressed concerns on several occasions, including through public consultations, about the impact of placing that emphasis on seniority in terms of hiring. Currently, in terms of our processes, there are some provisions in some of our collective agreements which indicate that where an assessment of skills, knowledge, and abilities of candidates are determined to be equal, that then seniority would govern. Those are largely in our education worker collective agreements. In the case of our teacher agreements, there are requirements that we consider, as Mr. Waldman pointed out earlier, our occasional teachers prior to going to external candidates, but there is no specific requirement for seniority. It would not be our recommendation that we incorporate seniority into our hiring procedures as we develop them. That if someone has that clearly experience is and can be an asset that would be valued in other ways through the process. Whereas seniority is strictly length of time in a role and is not necessarily always completely aligned with someone being the best candidate for a position or the person that we would necessarily wish to engage. In some respects, seniority and requirements around seniority can also limit efforts to diversify a workforce, depending on who the pool is being drawn from. There can be limitations, and so it was also one of the reasons why this board and others expressed concerns about the impact of Regulation 274.
Trustee Ellis, anything further?
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment.
Go ahead, please.
It's in the chat. Sorry, I've misspelled seniority. And I would propose that it fit under the qualifications and merits, 4.8, 4.8B6. And so this states that if there's more than one candidate and that meets the criteria for the position, that if there is an employee, that an employee with seniority at the OCDSB, that would be the seniority would be the deciding factor. So this is if, two equal candidates, equally qualified, one's an OCDSB employee and others not, then we would default to staying with the OCDSB because they have seniority at the OCDSB, and that would of course follow through for doing promotions within the board. And there's a number of OCDSB employees vying for that position. If there's equal candidates, equally meet the criteria, then seniority would come into as the deciding factor. Thank you.
And so again, I will ask for staff comment on this first, and then we will look to see if it's friendly or not.
Thank you, through you, Chair. What I would insert with this particular scenario is that if indeed this were to be adopted, what that would mean is that it would limit the capacity to be able to engage representatives of marginalized groups, because in a circumstance like this one, where it is that the person with more seniority that is internal to the organization, but someone equally qualified who might represent and be representative of the diversity of the community, but is outside of the organization or has lower seniority, it would impede our capacity to be able to advance that goal. I also would caution from the point of view that when we, a part of the challenge around the seniority piece is that while it is that experience is valued, certainly the rest of the policy speaks to a variety of kinds of experiences. And so there is a caution and frankly a concern that I would register by going back to a seniority-based hiring, because we have learned, and this board itself has written in support of amending that approach. And so this would be counter to that piece. I will ask Superintendent McCoy to attach any additional thoughts that I have neglected to register at this time.
Nothing to add except to say that I would concur completely with the director's comments.
Thank you very much. So my question then is whether this is friendly. Trustee Lyra, you're shaking your head. No, it is not friendly. So you're the first speaker on my list. You're muted, or I can't hear you.
My apologies. I took it out to grab a drink. So my question to staff actually is criteria narrow in such a way as to be exclusionary of the lived experience and the diverse community experiences that we've talked about in the rest of the document?
Through you, Chair, I'll ask Superintendent McCoy directly.
So if I understand the question correctly, it certainly is part of the consideration. I think, however, as the director indicated, I think it does leave open the concern about how one would assess those qualifications and the criteria for the position, and lead to situations where, again, there could be an argument that seniority should rule the day in terms of what is equivalent. I should note that those provisions that I referred to earlier were in collective agreements as a result of a long history of bargaining, and could also say that they are probably some of the provisions that create or lead to many of the grievances around those groups in terms of what is the equal assessment of criteria. And so that would be a concern along the lines of your question as well, Trustee Lyra.
Okay, so to be clear, while criteria does not inherently mean, it does not inherently remove lived experience or diverse communities from the set of things we look for, it creates grievances that are often grieved when we have criteria that are not strictly education related. Am I understanding this correctly?
That's through you, Chair. Yes, that's part of it in terms of what are the skills, knowledge, and ability that are being assessed. And again, always leads to questions around whether or not there is a fair application of not only the assessment, but also the specific criteria that is being included. And it may vary from position to position. So in some positions, it may be quite clear in terms of making the connection between the lived experience and the role, and in others, it may be less clear.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. I think that there might have been a better way to go about this. I think a grandfather clause for people who've already been on the list for at least 3 or 4 years would have been a better solution. And so I will be voting down this amendment.
Thank you, Trustee Lyra. And we haven't been using our timer very much, but maybe we should start thinking about that as I look at the hour, because we haven't had a break yet. Trustee Campbell?
Thank you. Briefly, I think I understand the impetus for this as I take it, and I'll listen to the mover and wrap up, I guess. But it's sort of an all other important things being equal kind of clause then, and I have some that I'm enamored of that somewhat, but I guess my concern is I don't know if things ever would really be equal in all important regards. If we have a set of criteria that are extremely detailed, such that, yeah, we don't care after that because the criteria are so detailed, then I guess I might lean towards saying, okay, maybe. but I suspect that in many cases, criteria won't be as detailed, right? They'll be more generic, closer to a set of minimum conditions, depending upon whether we're looking for a large group of applicants or a small group of applicants or what have you. In which case, a lot of the point ranking which will occur will be sort of a multi-factor consideration and analysis, which will move beyond the strict criteria. And I think we need to preserve that and that ability. So while I think I understand the impetus for this, I worry it wouldn't be practical and maybe overly constraining, but I'll listen to the debate. Thank you.
Trustee Penny.
Thank you very much. And I do share the same concerns as my colleague. I think it's the way that it is worded is unnecessarily vague and therefore subject to the same nepotisms and cronyisms and isms that our policy that we finally crafted is designed to defeat. And also the way that it is worded, it is, when you look at it, it says when multiple candidates meet the criteria. So that to me means basic criteria that seniority should be the deciding factor, which is really defeating the purpose because it's going back to Regulation 274. The way that it is worded is really going back to Regulation 274. So I'm going to urge my candidates not to vote or urge my colleagues not to vote for it.
Thank you, Trustee Penny. Trustee Bell, you had your hand up, but you took it down. Did you no longer wish to speak?
No, I think my colleagues have said it.
Thank you. And I have no other speakers on my list, so I'm back to Trustee Ellis for wrap up.
Yes, the concern that we're back to the regulation that puts seniority above everything is not. This is my amendment says, it says if there's one candidate that meets the criteria, there's no problem. So when there's one or three that may meet the criteria, and the criteria, I think we need to, one of the things we're trying to do is to diversify our workforce. And one of the criteria could be, for this position, we're looking for someone from a marginalized community. So if you had everyone who was equal, except, and you were looking to diversify our workforce, we could have someone who's from a marginalized community, from outside the board, and someone who's not from a marginalized community, who has been with the board for 10 years. And I think we should state up front, we're looking for people to diversify our program. So in that case, it wouldn't be equal. You'd go with the outside hire for that position because you've identified what the criteria is. And one of it is that it's someone with a lived experience of, can be for different groups, for Indigenous and that. So this is the last factor, and there are qualifications. There has to be more than one candidate who would be acceptable for the position, and then would then honor those who have worked in our organization at the OCDSB for a number of years. I hope you support it, but thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Ellis. So I will call the question on the amendment. Does anybody need it read again? It's there in the chat. To add, when more than one candidate meets the criteria, then seniority with the OCDSB shall be the deciding factor. All those in favor of this amendment? And those opposed to this amendment? And the amendment fails. Did you have anything further, Trustee Ellis?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Is there any more debate on the main motion? Trustee Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted a very brief comment. I'm sure we all have our own views of how this process has gone. It's a very important policy. I hope we're all approve this and move onwards with it. We have a number of heavy policies coming forward, and a lot of policy review work and policy standards discussions, which we probably should be having. I've talked to some colleagues and
Trustee Campbell,
yeah.
are you if you could speak to the motion that's on the floor, the matter of how we deal with our other
Thank you, Madam
policies
Chair.
is something that is under heavy duty discussion.
Thank you. I'll stop my comment. I was encouraged to do so by staff, but fine. Thank you.
And Trustee Schwartz.
I just want to follow what Trustee Campbell was saying, and I do think we need to set aside some time to have a discussion about how this particular policy went and the procedures behind it. I have some ideas, and I do think that we should have a discussion, Madam Chair.
And I will say the same to you, that this is under discussion, and input will be sought from all trustees.
I appreciate that input will be sought. Thank you.
Any further comments on the motion that is on the floor? If not, I will go back to Trustee Boothby as the mover for wrap up.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'd just like to thank staff for all the work on this and being open to our changes, to working with us for the many changes that we've put forward in this policy, and also to my colleagues for all the work on this. No further wrap up required. Thanks.
And that brings us then to Trustee Lara.
I think we need to leave committee of the whole rules.
So you're moving to leave committee of the whole rules, and so I will call the question first on that. All those in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. And that brings us back to board. We have our motion on the floor with regard to approving policy for equitable hiring and recruitment as amended. This would be policy P.146HR. The motion is still on the floor by Trustee Boothby. It was seconded previously, and Trustee Boothby has had her wrap up. So it will be a recorded vote, and I will ask Manager Guthrie if she could please open the vote.
Excuse me, has the vote come up, or am I?
The vote should be up there in your e-scribe. And if you have a problem, you can always send a chat message to Manager Guthrie, and she will enter your vote for you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just received it. Thanks.
And we have a vote. The policy, the motion is approved unanimously, 12 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Huge thank you to all of the trustees who have worked very hard trying to get the language right for this. Thank you for the input from our non-voting representatives, which has been very helpful and has enriched our discussion. And thank you also to our staff who worked very hard to keep track of all of these and have provided a lot of feedback and useful information to us as we've considered the draft policy. With that, it is almost 9:30 at this point in time. We do still have several items for action, but I think everybody needs right now a 5-minute break, so we will reconvene at 9:35. Now 9:35. I'm just going to ask if you are back with us. Would you please turn your video on or raise your hand or something so we can see that people are actually here. And I'm seeing we have quorum, we have the director, we have lots of people. That is excellent. Thank you. So I call us back, this meeting back to order and move on to the next item of business, which is item 8.6, receipt of the report from the ad hoc committee for the board self-evaluation process and the director performance evaluation process. And to go first of all to Trustee Huff. Would you like to move receipt?
Sure. The ad hoc committee for board self-evaluation process and the director performance evaluation process met on the 7th of April, 2021 and reports and recommends as follows. On a motion by Trustee
Well,
Ellis,
first of all, we need to receive the report.
Okay.
So
Yes,
you're
sorry.
moving receipt?
Yes, I'll move receipt.
And do we have a seconder for that, please? Trustee Jennings, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions in the report? And if there are none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor of receipt? And opposed? And the motion to receive is carried. And now back to you, Trustee Huff.
Okay. On a motion by Trustee Ellis, which I will second, that the board suspend section 4.4A, sections 1 through 4 of policy P.130.gov, evaluation process for the Board of Trustees on the comprehensive review. Shall I do the second one as well at this point?
No, let's do them one at a time. I guess the question is whether this requires debate or is it a consent item? Trustee Campbell?
Yes, I guess I'd just like to explore the rationale. I read the minutes, but that's not complete for me.
Thank you for that. So that means we will deal with that in a moment. And now the other motion, Trustee Huff?
On a motion by Trustee Penny, which I will second, that the board undertake a comprehensive review of the director's performance during the 2021-2022 school year based on the current job description, that a review of the director's job description be undertaken following the comprehensive evaluation, and that Boyden Global Executive Search be contracted to facilitate an evaluation of the director's performance for the 2021-2022 school year.
And you seconded that. So is this item a consent item? Trustee Lyra?
No.
It is not. So let us go back then to the first of the two motions. We will have debate on it. Trustee Ellis, as the mover, you get to do the introduction.
Thank you. A bit of the background, when we took a look at what was the types of questions and the information that previous board evaluation had. There was some discussion around that it might be lacking some nuance and actually what we were trying to get to. And that coupled with the challenge for this year to go out to the community with COVID and the work that, well, I'm not sure if we discussed about the work the board doing, but for those two items, time to get out to consult to the people and how engaged they would be, and a desire by the committee to reevaluate the kind of questions that we were asking is the reason that we're suspending for the recommendation for suspending this for this year.
Okay, thank you. That is very helpful to me, and I'll support. I guess my misgiving is that in a what has been a very difficult year, it's sort of a funny year for the board to sort of give itself a pass on feedback from the community as how well it's done. But I better understand the reasoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Campbell. Trustee Fisher?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I think for the same arguments that Rob had raised, while he, I think, has decided to support it, I do not support the motion. I do think that, you know, during a time of crisis, which doesn't happen very often for a board our size or for any institution, that we should listen to our community and take stock of some of the concerns, the lessons learned, the feedback that we receive. If we need to take the time to get the questions right, then we should take the time to get the questions right. But I think that this is an incredibly important time for the board to be listening to our community and getting feedback, you know, in this difficult time and learning from that experience. So I don't support suspending it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Fisher. Trustee Huff.
Although I hear what Trustee Fisher is saying, I think that there are a couple things here. One is that there would be considerable effort that would be required to make the questions meaningful and helpful to the process of moving us forward at this point in time, based on the fact that COVID is impacting performance goals, the whole shebang. So there would be a considerable amount of time and effort that would be required to make this a meaningful process at this point in time. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen just because it would take effort, but I'm just putting that forward. I think the other thing is that there's still a self-evaluation process. There's a process for us to look at how we've performed, how we've handled this crisis, and that will come to us later in the year. So that's something to be considered. And I think I would just add that I recently have had a zone meeting with my schools, which was actually a really wonderful opportunity to hear feedback directly from the principals and from the school council chairs about how they were thriving or surviving during this time. And I actually think that process was probably a whole lot more helpful and telling and informative and mutually helpful, because I think it was helpful to the participants as well as it was to me, than this process of sending out yet again more questionnaires and more emails and more demands for filling in something from our community, and what level of input we would get from that may just not even be very helpful. So I would just, you know, ask you to consider all of the variables that are in play in this particular situation.
Thank you, Trustee Huff. Are there any other speakers to this? Seeing none, I'll go back to Trustee Ellis for wrap up. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you know, and perhaps we could have staff send the trustees what the questions were in the past for the more substantive review for the board. I think they'll understand why we're bringing this up. One of the things that I hope will take place if you support this is that the committee will the ad hoc committee could take on coming up with a better set of questions for going forward. I think that was discussed briefly at it So, yes, I suppose I'll either be bringing a motion forward in the future. I'll give notice a motion for, I'll do it under new business. Thank you. That's for wrap up. Thank you. It's disjointed as it was.
Thank you, Trustee Ellis. This will be a recorded vote. So I will ask Manager Guthrie if she could please open the vote. And we have a result of the vote. The motion is carried, 9 in favor, 2 opposed, and no abstentions. And moving on then to the motion by Trustee Penny, which was also non-sent. Trustee Penny, would you like introduction?
Sure thing, Madam Chair. So in our policy, a director is to undergo a comprehensive review once in their term. We had debated whether this year was suitable to do that, but it seems to be quite an unusual year because the items that were slated to be done on our strategic plan, a lot of them have been not set aside, but have been overtaken by events not of our choosing. So it's a little bit unfair to do a comprehensive evaluation on the director on that. We did, the committee did talk it over, and we felt that next year was probably a better year to do that. And following that, if we want to make any changes to the director's job description, it is probably best to do it at that time. And the third item on the motion is that Boyden we feel that Boyden should be selected because they've proven to be effective in the past in providing a comprehensive review and evaluation of performance. They do it they have a very good process for doing that. And they've had very positive feedback on that process from both the trustees and the directors that have been subject to that process. So that's in essence why we think, number one, it should be delayed till 2021-2022 school year, and that review of the job description be done after that review, and that Boyden should be selected. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Penny. And just for one matter of clarification from staff, does this represent a delay, or is this simply a decision that gives timely notice?
Under the policy, there is a requirement that the decision about a comprehensive evaluation be made prior to the start of the evaluation year. So it is in fact noticed to the director that the comprehensive evaluation would occur next year. In the same way, the job description can't be amended during the evaluation year. Any changes to the job description must be made prior to the start of the evaluation year so that the director is aware of the conditions on which the position is evaluated.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted everybody to understand that this is not in fact a delay of the process. It is a decision that we would have to make before the end before the end of June, give or take, for next year in any event. And the usual processes will apply. So in terms of the debate, I had, I believe it was Trustee Lyra had raised her hand previously.
Yes, Trustee Penny actually answered all of my questions in his introduction, so I feel now this is a consent item. Thank you.
And if there is no further debate, then I will go back to, oh, Trustee Fisher, you wish to speak to this?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Maybe I've lost something in translation here, but did I hear you correctly or staff correctly in saying that typically this would be a review that we would be undertaking between now and June, or is this typically a review that we would be taking place next school year anyways? I lost something in the conversation. So were we supposed to be doing the evaluation for 2020, 2021, or were we set up to do it for 21, 22? I'm just a bit confused.
Policy requires, the language in the policy for director evaluation is slightly different than board evaluation, which is probably part of the confusion. The director evaluation policy requires that the director be evaluated once in the director's term of the contract, which in this particular case is a 5-year term. In the board evaluation policy, it's at the midpoint. There is not a midpoint requirement. The only requirement in the director's contract or in the director's evaluation policy is that the director be provided notice in advance of the comprehensive evaluation year. So this is the point at which you would be providing notice that for the 2021-2022 school year, the evaluation will include a comprehensive evaluation. So it's a bigger evaluation process than what happens every other year, because the director does have an annual evaluation based on feedback from the Board of Trustees. Does that answer your question?
I think so. And that comprehensive allows us to look backwards in time as well, sort of take stock of what's happened over this year. Is that true, or?
Well, technically, you're evaluated for the evaluation period. So it's a year, and you raise an interesting question. I'd have to look at the very specific language in the policy. But the comprehensive evaluation collects or invites input from a broader audience than what happens in a regular evaluation year. So that's the big difference.
Okay, I just want to know what time periods we're taking stock of. I guess that's important to me.
And there will be an evaluation for the current year.
Thank you.
Any further speakers, questions? Back to you then, Trustee Penny, for wrap up.
None required, Madam Chair.
And again, this will be a recorded vote. Manager Guthrie, could you please open the vote? And the motion to undertake a comprehensive review of the director's performance during the 2021-2022 school year is carried based on the current job description. 11 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Thank you. Moving on to matters for discussion then, a report from the OPSPA representatives, Trustee Boothby or Trustee Penny.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have one this evening. It will be coming later this week. Thank you.
And item 10, our board work plan is there for review or comment if there is any. I note that we have successfully been able to reschedule our professional development session on strategic enterprise risk management. If there are no questions or comments, we will move on to matters for information. We don't have any new matters for information at this point. And that brings us to new business. Is there any new business? Trustee Bell.
Okay, so just quickly, I would like to send my condolences to the Somerset West Community Health Center. Now, this is an organization I think many of you know that is very important to our community and does programming in early on centers, and just recently sent in a submission for our human rights policy. They serve us in many, many, many regards. And this past weekend, they lost one of their most beloved harm reduction workers. He lost a life very, very senselessly. And so I would like to put on the record that we send our condolences, and our thoughts are with the community as they heal.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Trustee Bell. Certainly, Mr. Ryan
Booth. Thank you. His name is Carl Ryan Booth. Thank you for mentioning his name.
Mr. Ryan Booth. It was a long-time worker, I believe, for the organization, and has supported a lot of people in the community for a very long time. And there's no doubt his loss will be deeply felt in the community. So thank you for bringing that forward. Next, I have Trustee Ellis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was a little I'm not asking to retake the vote because it wouldn't make any difference to the outcome, but I got confused when we were voting on items coming out of in camera. And the first item, I voted not in favor, and my intent was to vote in favor. And the third item was the one that I was not in favor of. I'm wondering if, again, it's not going to make any difference, practical difference, but I'm wondering if my explanation can be captured in the minutes so that there's no, my true intent is documented.
I'm seeing staff nodding their heads, so that will be recorded properly. Thank you very much. Is there any other new business? Seeing none, I would just like to say how much I appreciate that we're able to conclude our debate and discussion of the equitable hiring policy. It was a great challenge to deal with so many amendments, and definitely we need to find a better process for dealing with complex policies, particularly when they are coming to us as new policies with many considerations attached to them. So we will continue to work on that. And with that, we have completed our agenda, and I declare the meeting adjourned. Thanks very much to everybody.